What's good? It is Sam here, and today is day number 28 since I decided to do real estate wholesaling in South Carolina. Every day I'm trying to make at least one step forwards in moving the ball towards creating an income from real estate wholesaling enough to live off of, and then continue to expand that. Today I did a bunch of driving for dollars, and I wanted to talk about that as well as how to run an ARV if that is what you are trying to do. If you are in real estate wholesaling, it's relatively easy. We're going to talk about that. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. Make sure you press that thumbs up button. Okay, so today is day 28. Every single day I am working towards taking a step forward. If you're trying to achieve anything in life, the easiest way to do that is to take massive action in the direction you're trying to go. And consistent massive action in the direction you are trying to go. And one of the ways that I want to hold myself accountable is to document that process on YouTube, and hopefully that is able to help somebody else along the process. And 3 years down the road, 18 years down the road, it is going to be an interesting content to take a look at and actually use that as throwback, or use that to write a book or multiple books or what have you. And today what I did is I actually went driving for dollars. I wanted to talk about the driving for dollars, but more importantly, getting on the same page with whoever is in your life about what it is that you are trying to achieve. I went driving for dollars with my girlfriend. She came out with me, and that way we get to spend some time together and talk, and we both talk about real estate, but we can build on that relationship, and that is so tremendously important. If you have the closest person in your life that does not support what you are trying to achieve, getting on the same page, and that doesn't mean haggling that person or giving that person a hard time because they don't support your dreams. That means you fucking execute. You look in the mirror and you execute on what you're talking about. If you have been saying things since you are in that relationship and you're not executing for however many years or months that you have been together, or decades, that's why. That's probably why. And they also might not feel good about themselves, so that manifests in the way that they treat other people in that relationship. So level up in your execution on what you want in life and on your relationship in terms of letting that ego go and actually trying to have some empathy in the conversation so that you can take that to the next level and continue to execute on what it is inside that really makes you happy, or that you believe is going to make you happy. So we went out driving for dollars. I got 22 new addresses to check out. These are also much nicer neighborhoods that we went driving for dollars in. Unlike the first contract that we have that I wanted to give an update on, the first contract we have is in the low 40s. So we've had a couple, I think this is probably going to be the case with almost every single contract, but the contract we have, not only if you were to take a property, and we're going to talk about the ARV and how you come up with that in a second, but if you were to take a property and there might be a range of possible values for that property that are going to make sense for a flip property, or potentially a rental. But this one is almost completely gutted, so it needs to be renovated completely, like a new kitchen. It needs flooring throughout, it needs plumbing, it needs a new bathroom, it needs walls. It just needs a shitload of work in this property. So there's a range that makes sense depending on what that person's trying to achieve, the investor, the person who's purchasing the property, as well, like whether they're flipping it or they're renting it. But also within each one of those categories, there's a range of the quality of the rehab that they're actually going to be doing, right? If you were really trying to push the envelope in terms of achieving the highest ARV, you're probably, and also the character of the person who is actually executing on that is going to play into how the renovation is done, whether they see something that we like could be done, but like you're like, it's going to end up costing more money, so they don't do it, or somebody who is just wants to go completely overboard, or who is new or doesn't know what they're doing. Like there's a spectrum within each one of those. Same thing with the rental in terms of the quality of the rental that needs to be that would be ready to go. So if you look at that spectrum, we can call it a range, right? There's like the bottom end where we could potentially get it at. Well, there maybe just not really a bottom end, maybe just more of a top end where it makes sense financially speaking for the end investor. And if we are already up towards that top end of the range, and then I'm told through the seller that the information that was provided to me is inaccurate in terms of the square footage of the property, and I'm already towards the top end of that range, that makes even less fucking sense. Because if you have a square footage for a property and that the maximum like allowable offer you could put in on something is up here, and if we're right about where it is, and then the property is actually 10% smaller than what was originally disclosed, then it makes even less sense. So both of those things happened. This is the first contract that I have under contract. So calculating the ARV wasn't necessarily a strong suit, and I didn't actually go through and know a lot about the repairs in this market. I know in Florida you can get things done extremely cheaply, but it appears that people pay a lot more for repairs in this market than they do in the Florida market. And so the repairs probably a little slim. They're definitely a little slim. And the process of calculating ARV was probably in the higher end from my standpoint, because the repairs are slim. So we locked it up at my partner and I locked it up at the highest probably possible value that would make sense for somebody who is going to flip the property. It would definitely make more sense as a rental, because of the price point. There's not a ton of margin in there necessarily, and depending on how you rehab it, but you'd have to rehab it on the lower side to try to like squeeze out a profit on it, or really know what you're doing in terms of the rehab costs, to be able to get it so that it makes sense. And when you go, let's just talk really quickly about how to calculate an ARV. So say you're looking at a property and the property is in XYZ neighborhood. So you can go to Zillow, I think Redfin, or probably a bunch of other sites have it as well. I think you can do it on PropStream as well, and look at the properties that have sold, say in the last 6 months, or if there hasn't been a ton that have sold in the last 6 months, maybe the last 12 months, and you want to narrow it down to find something that is very, very similar. If there's a tremendous amount of activity in the market that you're looking at, and you probably want to stay in a relatively close proximity to that property in terms of the neighborhood. The more you know about the neighborhood, the more you can understand where and how big you can go in terms of the scope of looking at comparable properties. But if you want to look at properties that are similar in terms of the square footage, so most of these platforms will allow you to search based upon the square footage. So if yours is, say, a 1,500 square foot property, you maybe go down to 250, 300 square feet below that, and 250 to 300 square feet above that, because those are pretty comparable. And then you can look at the different amenities on the property. everybody is going to be doing the same type of thing for their comparables. But the closer that you can get to coming up with the most accurate number, the easier it will be for you to not overpay for a property. And you on the individual properties that have sold in the last 6 months or 12 months might be stretching it depending on the market, but in the last property, the properties that have sold, and you looked at the square footage, look at the bedroom sizes as well, and like a pool or a bath, an extra bathroom or a garage. These things can all be adjusted. So say if the property under question that you're going to be putting a offer in on has a garage, and then the 3 other properties that you're looking at that have sold in the last 6 months that are 250 plus or minus in terms of the square footage, do not have a garage, and you can just do a quick Google search and maybe that adds $10,000 of value onto that price, right? So you can make that adjustment as you see fit on that. And the other thing is, look at if it is going to be who you're going to be marketing to, right? If you're going to be marketing to a flipper or somebody who's going to renovate the property and then flip it to a retail buyer, the quality of the property also needs to be taken into consideration, because if you have 3 properties that you're trying to use as comparables, and one of those properties, hey, sold 4 months ago, and it is from Joe and Sally fucking whatever, and they just got out of the property and they sold it, not necessarily in horrible condition, they just had lived there for 10 years and they decided to move for whatever reason might be, but there was definitely some updating that could have been done on the property. That is going to sell for a lower price than the other 2 properties that were maybe completely renovated and sold for top dollar. Anytime there is something that is completely renovated, that's going to sell at the top end of the market. The vast majority of the time is going to sell at the top end of the market versus something where Joe and Sally just move out of it and maybe it needs like some fresh paint and the cabinets need new hardware and some new light fixtures and maybe new carpeting or new flooring. You know what I mean? It just needs a little bit of updating in the property. It's going to sell for a different price. So if you have those 3 properties and 2 of them have been completely renovated and the other one hasn't, then even though the one that hasn't is maybe say the closest in terms of the square footage, it doesn't necessarily make sense to use that as a comparable if it's not actually comparatively speaking, the same exact quality of product, right? You're trying to compare something that's 10 years old with something that's going to be completely renovated. And you're going to see the delta, which is just the change in something. You're going to see the delta between the renovated property and the comparable property in terms of the square footage, but that is 10 plus years older in terms of the updating of the property or just basic maintenance shit around the property. You're going to see those different. So taking whether there's enough sales in the area to take that into consideration is something that you need to consider. Or if you're going to use the property that is 10 years old, maybe there's an adjustment that you can make in terms of if you're looking at 2 properties that are completely renovated and the premium in terms of per square footage is a 25% premium relative to the property that's 10 years old, you could make that adjustment if you feel that is warranted to come up with that number. Now you have what you think the after repair value is going to be. That's what the ARV is. So you take your after repair value and you multiply that times 0.7. Now I'm going to get into how I calculated the ARV on the property we have under contract in a moment, but we'll just finish running through that. So you have that number, right? You just went through all that shit that I talked about, and you have your ARV, or after repair value, times 0.7. Now you have some type of idea of what repairs are. So how do you get an idea of how much repairs cost? Well, there's a little thing called Google. You can fucking Google that shit. or talk to a contractor because the prices you're going to find on Google are going to be much more, from my experience, on the retail side of pricing, which just means that if you're paying retail for anything, you're going to pay more for it. If you're paying retail for a new kitchen, I'm in my new apartment, you're going to pay retail for a new kitchen, you're going to pay way more than if you're not paying retail for a new kitchen. You're going to pay way more if you want all this fucking shit in a certain way than if you just want it done. In a good quality but just updated. There's going to be two different prices you pay. So if you're new and you've never done it before, you are going to pay more than somebody who has experience. So you can use that as a baseline to get an understanding, and might not be a bad idea if it's your first. If it's your first deal, to get those higher, more conservative numbers, as long as it's not going to completely lock you out of a deal in terms of coming in ridiculously too low, depending on the property. So, say in this example, the ARV, the after repair value for the properties that we were considering, is $200,000. So you take $200,000 times 0.7. So now you're at $140,000. You take that $140,000 and say it just needs some minor updating and, painting and some flooring and a little bit in the kitchen and a little bit in the bathrooms, and it's going to cost, say, $20,000 or $25,000. So you come in, say it's 20, right? So you come in at $120,000. So now that's the price you could offer if you didn't make any money. So then how much money do you want to make? So you figure, like, okay, I want to make $10,000 on this. I want to make $15,000. I want to make $20,000 in this, right? So you come in at $100,000. So you are offering the homeowner $100,000 for their property, that the ARV on the property is going to be $200,000. And there's a opportunity there to make money from, there's multiple different stages there, right? Like, you're going to make a little money. The people who are going to be renovating it are going to make money. The people who are going to be coming in and doing the actual work are going to make money. When the property sells, the lawyer who does the work or the title company is going to make money. If it is sold by an agent, agent's probably going to make some money. So there's a lot of people who are going to be taking a piece of the pie throughout that transaction. And you might think, well, why the fuck would a homeowner do that? Many reasons why a homeowner would do that. We're working on a property right now where the homeowner just doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. He's had this property and he hasn't even lived in it. 6 months he's been staying at his girlfriend's because he doesn't want to be in the property. It's a fucking shithole. He just doesn't want to be there. He could care less. That's the type of person that probably makes more sense to just rent a property. Shit gets fucked up, call somebody, right? Shit gets fucked up here, I would much rather rent. So this way, if there's something wrong, I get on the phone and I'm like, hey, fix your fucking shit. I don't want to fix that. I'd rather get on the phone and have somebody else do that. If I can make money from it, that's a different story. But wherever I'm going to live, I'd rather just rent. To me, it makes more sense. Not to everybody, but for me, that makes way more sense than paying and then having to do all the work and the maintenance and take all the depreciation cost of having, say, if this one didn't have appliances, right? And if I had to add on appliances, I have to hold on to that depreciation cost. I don't want to do any of that shit. My fridge gets fucked up, get on the phone. Something happens, get on the phone. Let somebody else deal with that. Not something that I want to take my time to consider to take care of. So, with that being said, the property that we have under contract, we didn't do all that, right? We did portions of it, and I was very light on the repairs because I took property in Florida that I own, and I added an entire kitchen and did some other renovations, and that was really cheap. But I was also doing it myself, and the labor in Florida is very, very inexpensive because there's a shitload of people moving there all the time, and people just want work. So they are willing to work at a lower cost. The cost of living in Florida is pretty cheap. Well, the cost of living in South Carolina is pretty cheap too, but the cost, or the repairs on that are pretty low. And then to consider what somebody paid for the property is a potentially valuable piece of information, but that doesn't necessarily need to be super relevant in terms of the first offer that is made on a property, and I definitely considered that in the first offer, which I think put me in a spot that I overpaid for the property, potentially. So, and then we have the me paying at the upper limit of what would be considered profitable. Then they find out that the square footage is actually 7 or 8% smaller than what they said on a property that's 3,000 square feet. And if it's off by 60 square feet, not going to matter. But on a property that's 800 square feet and then goes down to 740 square feet, it's a bigger fucking difference. So that plays into it. And then we have this stuff that's going on, the craziness in the economy right now with the virus. So that also plays into consideration. We actually sent out an assignment contract to a buyer from a hedge fund, and he made an offer and then sent over the assignment contract and then sat on it for about 25 hours or so, 20 hours, and then comes back and was like, hey, we're actually going to offer about 15% less than what we told you that we were going to offer because of this. And so that's the third person to pull out from the assignment contract, which is just par for the course. This is just part of like doing business, that people are going to do these things that, like, they want to make more money, right? So they're going to try to get it at a lower cost. So the owners of the property may end up taking the property back over and actually renovating it themselves. If things do not play out, if we don't find a buyer, they've already told and expressed that, hey, we might actually be moving now with everything that's happening, and we might just stay here and renovate the property if it doesn't sell. So we're not in a bad spot. Plus, given the misinformation and with what's happening in the economy, the reputation also wouldn't be an issue there as well. We have even talked about potentially partnering on a different deal into the future. So if you guys like this video, make sure you share it with somebody else who you think can get value out of it. It helps them out, hopefully, if they can get value out of it. Plus, it helps out the channel, too. Make sure you press that subscribe button, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.